Okay, so Unit 9.1, if you like to label these sort of things, as it will be labeled on YouTube, this is Part 3. This is the end of Unit 9.1. Like I said, you'll have a video this weekend for homework, the Russian Revolution. If you were Block 1B, if you're Block 3A, you'll get into that next week. So we left off with the Gallipoli campaign, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong. Had left off with 1915, the British and Australian forces failing to take the Dardanelles as a step towards taking Constantinople, and failed to take over the Turks or defeat the Turks. And then 200,000 British troops killed or wounded, about 500,000 total is where we had left off. And so now, a lot of people would say that there's really only two significant fronts, and really, if you were to pick a front, the Western Front would be the significant front in France, where most of this fighting took place. We looked at the Eastern Front, and we watched Russia do what in the Eastern Front?
Make peace.
Yeah, to sign their own separate treaty and pull out, because who has died by this time? In Russia. Who has died and leads to Russia pulling out of World War I? The Tsar. Yeah, the Tsar has died. We have Vladimir Lenin coming in. We're going to have a change there, and Russia having all kinds of problemos at home. That is our topic of 9.2, the Russian revolutions and what's going on there, and leading Russia into becoming a communist, our first communist nation. So all of that coming up. So we need to move to our next front. A lot of people don't even mention these fronts, but I think that it is good to mention. This is what I would call the Southern Front, the Middle East. I mean, compared in relativity to the other two fronts, this would be the Southern Front. If you want to write out there, this is the third front of the war. Of course, nothing's going to be as big as the Western Front, but we kind of need to mention it. Who had held the Middle East up until this point? Yeah, the Ottoman Empire, a sick old man of Europe, but still there, geographically have been providing support for our Central Powers. And so we have T.E. Lawrence. I believe his first name is Thomas Lawrence. You may know him more familiarly from world history as Lawrence of Arabia. And so Lawrence of Arabia is a British officer who is going to score some major victories in the Middle East to weaken the Turks. Lawrence of Arabia, again, is another movie. If you aren't a Mel Gibson fan, this one does not have Mel Gibson in it like Gallipoli. And so Lawrence of Arabia, I can't remember the actor. Has anybody seen that? You may have to watch that for...
Recently died.
Yeah.
Who did?
Like name, not hitting...
The guy who played in Lawrence of Arabia?
Yeah. I can't... It's like failed me.
I think he's...
Like he died
Is Jess... Yeah, is Jessie Googling it? No. She should...
I feel like his name's like Peter or something really British.
Yeah, man, I don't like, I'm having a brain aneurysm. Anyway, it's not Mel Gibson, that's Gallipoli. But there's a movie about this if you would like to see the cinematic version. So, he's a British officer. He's going to have some significant victories, what he's remembered for in weakening the Ottoman Turks, weakening the Turks. The British are then going to gain the support of Arab tribes who resented Ottoman domination of the region. So that's kind of some of that nationalism. They had resented the Ottoman Empire being over them. The British, we're going to see in a little while, are going to make some pretty big promises to the Arabs that they do not fulfill after World War I. You can put a little star here that a lot of the problems we have today in this region of the world are due to what's going to happen in the Middle East after World War I and during World War I, especially promises that aren't kept. Okay, so that's pretty much all I have to say there. This is the rise of some Arab nationalism, like Baghdad, Jerusalem, places where we have problems today. So T.E. Lawrence of Arabia. Next we have the fourth front. So I told you third front's going to be pretty short, but I think you need to know why there's some existing problems still today. Next is going to be, the fourth front is the ocean. Okay, that's where we're heading now.
That's right, it's Peter O'Toole.
Oh, nice. There we go.
We were talking about this.
We played in Ratatouille.
How did he get there?
Oh.
You did? Yeah, hold on, I'm going to find out who he was. Oh my god, Ratatouille guy died.
I like how that becomes more important than Lawrence of Arabia.
I've seen Ratatouille, not
Oh.
Lawrence of Arabia.
Well, now you must go see Lawrence of Arabia.
Ego.
Yeah, ego.
All right, so fourth front, guys, the ocean. British and Allied naval blockades. We're back to this from earlier. You can see here, I think this is a pretty clear picture. I like this map of the blockades trying to like suffocate or starve Germany. Okay, so this is the British and Allied naval blockades. The goal was to strangle the Central Powers. By strangle, I mean starve. If you can't get goods in, you aren't going to be able to get food and all the resources you need in to feed your population, so they're trying to starve Germany. Starting in 1914, the British and Allies are going to use a superior fleet and sea mines to cut Central Powers off from overseas trade and cause Germany to lose control of its very new, very small, but important colonial empire that Wilhelm II was all obsessed with. So all that work he'd done, they're now going to strangle that from him. Those little places in the Congo and such he'd taken. What weapon does Germany have in its arsenal that we talked about with weapon technology that you think it's going to counter this blockade with? U-boat, yep, submarines, there we go. And so Germany is going to respond by sinking Allied vessels. This is called unrestricted submarine warfare. We've talked about this before. What is going to be the most significant cause for the United States to enter World War I? Unrestricted submarine warfare. Not at this exact moment, but in a little bit. And so what's going to happen is we're going to see all boats that are heading towards Great Britain are going to be sunk by German U-boats. And the Germans know that this is going to be a problem. Like Americans have a lot of boats that go to Great Britain, right? And vice versa. And so they put out this ad in the New York Times. In the New York Times, it says, "Hey Americans, stay off of ships going anywhere near Great Britain because we're sinking them. Like, please, 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 we don't want, you're not involved, like, stay off these ships."
Because they knew that we would screw them over if we did get involved.
Yeah, like they don't want us to join. Like they know very clearly. And so what happens is, I don't know if like modern society people just aren't reading the newspaper or they're just like whatever, but we have people not paying attention, and the Lusitania, which is a British passenger liner, is going to be sunk in 1915, and 1,200 people will be killed, including 128 Americans.
Were they just passengers? Or were they
Yeah,
involved?
they were just passengers. But what the Germans are going to say is, we're sinking every ship that's going into Britain. It had supplies on it. It's supplying their cause. We're in a war with them, and we warned you. Okay? And so this is really going to tick off the Americans, even though they had tried, they put an ad in the newspaper. And so they're going to tell the Germans,
You would think that an ad
don't-
like that would get a lot of attention.
It did get a lot of, like Lusitania, so the big attention. The U.S. is like, don't do it again. This is pretty much where we say, if you do this again, we are going to come into the war. We do make a diplomatic statement like that. We don't come in. A lot of students are confused that the sinking of Lusitania is the reason we entered the war. It is not. It is part of the reason, but it's really unrestricted submarine warfare because Germany's not going to stop. Okay, so we say, hey, don't do that again. Germany claims, hey, it was self-defense, like they're starving our people, they're cutting us off, we have to sink the ships, we have to, retaliate, and we're going to say, no, don't do that again. So in Germany in 1917, after 1915, so it's been 2 years, I have in your notes here, I typed began. That's not supposed to say began. I think I told the class yesterday, sometimes I power nap and stop typing your notes and then come back to them. And this is obviously one of those points. This is supposed to say resumed, because if they were already doing it in 1915, they can't just start in 1917. My bad. So Germany in 1917 resumed unrestricted submarine warfare, sinking all ships with its U-boats. This is the most important reason for U.S. entry into the war, because there's been a long-standing belief that there's freedom of the seas. And we stand behind that. Our trading shouldn't be impeded because you're at a war with anyone. And so 1917, resuming of unrestricted submarine warfare is going to be the main reason for the United States entry into the war. We are going to enter to keep the water safe, like we would say, for democracy. So keeping it open, keeping it free.
Weren't there U-boats off the coast of America?
Yeah,
Was that after that we got involved, so they started sending some?
Yeah, there was this huge fear of blacking out your lights if you're on the coast, that we would be attacked and all of these things, which never ended up happening. There was a lot of hysteria. We're going to see a little bit of that in World War II as well. But
it's not a war if you don't have hysteria.
Yeah, but I mean, actually, the United States is kind of excited. I mean, we didn't want to get in it at first, and we're going to be isolationist after. But like, we haven't seen a war like this. So yes. Sorry.
Well, I mean, but at the same time, wasn't the U.S. trading more with the United Kingdom than France? So it wasn't completely free trade. They were economically at least helping.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's not a fair statement that the Germans said. It really isn't. It just ticked off the United States because we saw ourselves removed from it, and we saw the oceans as open to everyone and wanted to continue doing what we were doing. Now, did the Lusitania have some supplies that were coming from America that had been bought that would help Great Britain in the war? Yes. Yes, it did. So,
But if Germany had wanted to buy something from us, since we weren't involved at the time, we probably would have started trading with them.
yeah, we were still trading, but they're being blocked.
Not as much.
Not really.
Yeah, not as much,
It
but
wasn't like we were trading them a lot to begin with. Like, nothing changed.
Yeah.
It was unfair before, and it was unfair after. Your support behind
At least
Yeah.
we were consistent in our unfairness.
But
It
then
didn't switch.
they started buying new stuff, like,
Yeah.
weaponry and stuff in the U.S. So.
yeah. Their needs changed as they were in a war with, yes, Germany. By the war's end, the blockade that was set up here, just this blockade, is going to be very successful or succeed in strangling Germany, resulting in thousands of German deaths due to starvation. Just a note here, after our reaction to the Lusitania at first was just a public apology and $5,000 to each family that had lost a family member from Germany, which they do take care of, but we are not, I mean, like, you go from that to, like, joining World War I with the second attack. So, I mean, that's how far things have escalated just in those 2 years.
Make it any better. Like, sorry, here's $5,000.
Yeah.
That makes up for the human life.
Yeah, it made him promise.
Sorry.
And the main part after
You
the...
give me like
Yeah, but
$10,000,
That's a huge
$100,000 right now.
Yeah,
That's
that's
not
all
mom. It's not gonna make me happy.
Pointless.
The main thing, though, was that we also made them promise they'd never, ever, ever do it again, and they do, okay? And so then we're like, okay, we gave you a chance.
Oh my God.
At this point, I kind of want to shift gears and to kind of let you back to Russia, because I feel like if I don't hit on Russia next week, isn't going to flow as well. And so the Allies' unknown war against Russia is called the Archangel Expedition in the summer of 1918. So what's going on in Russia in 1918? Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution. And so Russia is pulled out of World War I at this point, and the Allies are seeking to prevent a Bolshevik victory during the Russian Civil War. They want to help the Tsar of Russia so that he'll help us fight. Okay, so they want to get Russia back in, so they're going to try to slow this down. It's a kind of a secret, unknown, you're...
Very well do that.
No.
It's kind of pathetic if you think about it. Like, all of the Allies combined couldn't prevent half of Russia from overthrowing.
Yeah, some other,
People in Russia.
yeah.
But they only have one gun for every 5 people.
Yeah, but they're willing to still go fight without it. Yeah. So the Allies are going to send troops into Siberia to prevent Japanese control of the region, rescue thousands of marooned Czechs, and prevent the Bolsheviks from getting new weapons and supplies. We're not really victorious here. The only thing we really do, which doesn't help Russia get back in the war, is we just prolong the Russian Civil War that's going on. And we're definitely going to talk about this next week, but it pertains here. I want you to write, like, big, in capital letters, fail out to the side of this mission, because this resentment of the Russians of, like, what, you're not involved in World War I, like you're pulling in people and you're dealing with this, and we had our own things to deal with, and now you're going to prolong the problems we were having, is going to be the anger that builds up and leads us into what was the conflict after World War II? The Cold War. Okay, this is really going to set the stage for that. This is where a lot of this anger comes that will build up into the Cold War after this. And so at this point, you might want to write out to the side, the United States is involved in this. This is in 1918. This is a year after we enter the war. And so I meant to make that clear as I started, but that is why a lot of the anger is between the United States and the USSR, because they're like, you just got involved, and you're mad at like, what do you have anything to do with us? You weren't even in the war when we were in the war, and so, like, who do you have room to talk? So
So no, they're trying to help, but all they're doing is getting
Yeah, no, because who ends up winning the Russian Revolution? Yeah, and so we didn't come in on the side that's going to be favorable for us either. So, next, we need to talk about the concept of total war. By like thumbs up, I hope, if you show me, you've all heard the term total war before. Yay! Okay, so this is going to go as quickly as I thought. Okay, so.
Was that on the actual thing?
Oh, for the U.S.
No, on our world.
On the world, yay!
Really? No, that
All
was the
I
one forgot
remember
about.
is that they made me write an essay about the effect of playing cricket on politics
That was
in
like-
India.
Yes,
In India.
Like Lagan, have you seen the movie Lagan?
We have never before that essay. I
That
never
whole
even
movie is
knew
about a bet
Lagan.
between
That
the.
was a DBQ though. In world DBQs, like you don't.
Yeah.
You know,
Did
they
we
make
even need
sure
any
that-
outside?
Yeah.
About the Olympics
Oh.
or something you won't know. They
Yeah.
don't want
Yeah.
to.
Like,
Because they just want you to use the documents. If you've seen, we show the movie Lagan in World Studies, and it's about a bet between the Indian and the British that they won't have to pay the taxes that year if they win this cricket game. So, like, I would have like rocked that DBQ. Like,
I
yeah.
want to know what the time comparison
I just wanna
is
know
for
how
our
cricket's played.
recorded
That's my
lectures
biggest
versus
thing.
the other
Baseball.
We stop a lot.
one. Edit these or?
Yeah, I might not. This one's going to be short anyway, so.
Plus, this is some really fun material stuff.
Yeah. So, back to total war. Total war is exactly like it sounds. It is not named to fool you. It is war at home. It is war in a total. It's war, whole civilizations versus whole civilizations. Not just the troops fighting. It is everyone. It is civilians. It is troops. It is workers in factories. It is everyone, not just the soldiers. So total war, mass war is also another term for it. It involved mass civilian populations in the war effort. This includes things such as massive conscription or the draft of most able-bodied men in their youth. In some cases, when you involve all of your civilians, not only in drafting, but in production of the war effort, and they're in cities that are going to be seized, you see massive civilian targets or casualties. And so we're going to see that play out in total war. Early in the war, Germany is going to use Zeppelins to bomb London. The British blockade that we just talked about will result in the starvation of not just the soldiers and the troops, but everyone in Germany. And so this is where total war comes in. You're not just aiming at soldier versus soldier. It's the entire population you're going against. So this kind of changes the concept here. How you're able to do this and people don't feel uncomfortable doing it is you are going to create a deep hatred for the enemy. And so the next thing that we're going to talk about, can anybody guess, would be called propaganda. Propaganda, deep hatred for the enemy. It's going to be used kind of like as advertising campaigns. News will be censored to promote, only this kind of propaganda that aids in hatred or dehumanization of the enemy. It's spurred by intense nationalism, so there's that N again in Armenia. Germany especially, most historians are going to say, are going to intensify this in the 1890s in order to rally the masses behind the government and slow down the growth of the SPD. We're going to see, we'll probably follow propaganda through Germany the most as we move through the rest of the year, just because they really take that dehumanization, especially in World War II. But also we're going to see a lot of U.S. posters with the Japanese too. Yeah, like here, look at this, and so the Hun I'm going to get to in the second, like Germany will get referred to as the Hun, like the Hun in Asia, but we're going to talk about why. But destroy this mad brute, like the Hun, and you like see he's carrying like liberty, and it looks like, like totally non-human. Defeat the Kaiser and his U-boats, like this is one, like trying propaganda to, what do I want to say? Restrict your consumption, stamp out the Kaiser, buy Liberty bonds. We're going to talk about how that helps the war effort as well. And so we're going to see dehumanization, especially in World War II. British propaganda effectively demonized Germany as the Hun. So kind of like that song from Mulan always goes in my head.
I just sang that.
I can't help it every time I say that. So this term starts in the Boxer Rebellion, so it does come from this part of the world. And in the Boxer Rebellion, they're going to say, remember those boxers, those like the tide, like they look like the Huns of old. And so then this phrase is going to be taken with the Germans, and it's going to be applied to them. Stories kind of demonizing the Germans as they moved through Belgium, that they like raped nuns and that they killed children, and that they bombed like this, or burnt down this 12th century cathedral in Belgium for no reason, like as they're marching through to France. So they're demonized as the Huns, like the Huns of old, like that stereotypical like xenophobia, like fear of foreigners thing. Yeah, so like they're demonized of the Hun of old, and that's where that comes from. Total war, again, economic production is going to be a big deal because it's going to be focused on the war effort. Strong central planning of the economy. So you want to make a note here. This is like a turn away from laissez-faire. A lot of socialists, a lot of communists are going to say that it works because of World War I. They're going to say, look at the economies that boomed when the government stepped in and took total control of production while we were at war. And like, so food is a weapon, don't waste it, like restricting how much you can have as a family and what you can have as a family. We're going to see that free market capitalism will be abandoned in favor of strong central planning of the economy. So bye-bye laissez-faire that we worked so hard to get. We're going to see changing attitudes due to economic production. So now men are away. So who's going to have to come and work in the factories? Women, yes. And so this is going to give us changing views of women. After World War I, we're going to see that women like not only get pity for like their role in this. 1918, where did all women get the right to vote? In Britain. Britain, right at right as the war.
Well, that was according to NOPAC that in Great Britain, 1919 or whatever, 1918.
1918.
That was only women over 30. I thought.
Well, women, yeah, suffrage for women over 30, and then we'll see the under 21 and up. But it's right. What coincides with this? People are like, oh, you stepped up. You like did a man's job during the war. Like maybe we should, out of this, give you respect and let you have vote. We're going to see that the United States will follow shortly after, so we're going to see the roles of women changing. Labor unions will increase because they support the war effort, because who do you need to work in these factories? Yeah, and the labor unions will be like, yay for the worker. Rationing of food, we're going to see. Civilians are going to help finance the war by buying war bonds. Does anybody have any bonds like your grandparents are giving you or anything? Like I had a ton that I cashed in on for my graduation. But you buy the bond, and then after the 10-year limit or whatever, you get that money back plus like interest on it. And so they would take civilian money and give them these bonds, and civilians would help pay for the war. So all of this is total war techniques, economic, propaganda, drafting. Each side aimed at starving out the enemy by cutting off vital supplies to civilian population. This is done by blockades. We're going to see all kinds of laws come out of this, service laws. We're going to see industrial laws. Just all kinds of stuff comes out of World War I. Not everything is negative, but we're going to see increase in centralized control by warring regimes. In France, Georges Clemenceau created a dictatorship during the war. So we're going to see the change in some control in the nations that we've been building up to. Germany will become the world's first totalitarian regime. We're going to talk about these things more in Unit 10, but just to mention them as it goes with the changes due to World War I. British economy will be largely planned and regulated. So again, instead of hands off, we're going to see the government step back in and take control. And so this time period is very much going to make socialism look like they're going to be like, look, it works. It works. So we should continue this after the war. And so this is going to continue with that argument between democracy and socialism and communism. And we're going to see all of that coming up in Unit 10. War is going to promote greater social equality, thus blurring class distinctions and lessening the gap between the rich and poor, especially because of this tremendous loss of life that we're going to have. So that's all I have to say on that. I think we're ready for diplomacy then during the war. So diplomacy, we have in 1915, so diplomacy or deals that are made during the war is an easier way to say that. In 1915, neutral Italy. So remember, Italy had pulled out. Does anyone remember why Italy had decided to leave?
They said that it was a defensive.
Right. that they were in a defensive pact rather than an offensive, so they've left. And so they've been neutral for this time. Italy is going to enter the war against the Central Powers now in 1915, its former allies, because the Allies are going to promise Italy some of the Austrian and Balkan territory called the Italia Irredenta. Or unredeemed Italy. And it's, if you think of the map of Italy, it's just above those northern areas that we saw unify. Okay, so it's these northern parts there, part of the Austrian and Balkan territory, and add some German colonies in Turkish territories that, the Germans have now lost their colonial territories due to the blockade. And so where has Italy struggled in the world? Yeah, Africa. And so it's going to promise them some territories as well. And so they are going to come back in the war, but now against their former allies, the Central Powers, and on the Allies' side. Next, and this is secret, by the way, right? The word secret here. Like, people don't know what they're promised if they help out the Allies. So this is kind of secret. We're in unrestricted warfare again in 1917. So Italy comes back in with the Allies before we get there. Just to give you a note, because I like to cover stuff by topic, not exact chronology. And we're going to see this play out in just a second. Next is a Zimmerman note. Like, raise your hand if you've heard of the Zimmerman. Yeah, like, hopefully we have all. You've covered that in U.S. So Zimmerman is the German foreign minister in Mexico. We have unrestricted warfare going on again. The Germans are worried about us coming in, and they know that if they start it back up in 1917, that most likely we will, because we told them we would after the Lusitania. And so what they're going to say is, if you help us, because America's going to get involved, like we have to, our people are starving. If they get involved, so he sends it to the foreign minister of Mexico, that we will give you, after we defeat the United States, we will give you back the territories they stole from you, in 1846 to 1848, like Arizona, New Mexico, et cetera, like if you come in on our side. Yes, ma'am?
I know we had talked about this in World and U.S., but is this legitimate that they think now that Britain actually sent it because, one, it was in English, and there was like some other evidence that Germany or Mexico never actually
I've heard like that, the conspiracy theory. I think, as far as I have read, the British intercepted it and translated it, and
They
intercepted it and translated it into English and then sent it to the United States. But I have also heard, and there is quite a bit of proof that Mexico, A, would have been like, psh, whatever, we're not going back there. B, it's just such a far stretch of like what could they have even could provided Germany, and we weren't in the war yet. I don't have any concrete proof. There's more history books that are going to say that it was sent. But I think it's a really good question, because diplomatically, like, this is like, not even talking left field, like the field next to the field you're playing on. And it's just conveniently that the British,
Mexico was like, do they have any like power at all? They have been a threat to you?
Other than giving us a two-front war if they allowed the Germans to port and come in, making us fight at home and abroad. The United States would have definitely considered that a threat, but the ability, if the Germans couldn't even get food because of the blockade, what were the chances that they were going to get boats? Seems a little far-reaching for me, even for the Germans, even for Wilhelm II.
They did think about two-front wars a lot.
So, I wish I was a fly on the wall. If there was a time in history, there are a couple I'd like to be back.
Bored with the Western, because nothing was happening there.
Bored. Yeah. Let's kick it up a notch. Yeah, they're all stuck in trenches. We need some more drama. And so next we have the Balfour Note. This is back to T.E. Lawrence and the Arabs. And this note is going to be sent because T.E. Lawrence is a British officer, And they had promised, remember when T.E. Lawrence was in the Middle East and he'd done these successes, that they were going to work towards Arab autonomy. And T.E. Lawrence is not a bad guy. I don't want you to think this here. Like, he legitimately thought Britain was going to follow through with these promises. He was very, that's why he's Lawrence of Arabia. He very much felt the sentiment for the Arabs that had been controlled by the Turks. But the British are kind of, you know, they're setting up all of their whole chessboard here. And so now they tell the Jews the same thing, kind of with the same area of land. And so they're going to, there's a Balfour Note, we're going to see the Arabs and Jews in Palestine were promised autonomy if they joined the Allies. So this is Zionism again, like, we'll give you a homeland, but they promised them both the same. So like, think about, like, flash forward to now, like, problems all out of World War I, treaties and things going on in this time period. Britain is going to declare with this Balfour Note, after they've already in the Middle East promised the Arabs that if, you know, that they're going to give them some autonomy, declared sympathy for the idea of a Jewish homeland in Palestine, which is Israel now. And this is who's living in this area at this time. The Arabs, yeah. The Arabs are already there. And so it's like, whoa, not only did you promise us autonomy, we're already here, and you're going to, so this is going to cause a lot of problems. This new policy seemed to contradict British support for Arab nationalism. And so this is continuing. This is a contradictory promise, is what I would call this today. And so problems today, there you go. Like, talk about history continuing to build upon itself. And so next we need to get to the United States plan. So who's our president when we enter World War I?
Wilson.
Yeah, Woodrow Wilson. And if you had to give an adjective to describe Woodrow Wilson, what would that be?
Idealistic.
Yes, thank you. Beautiful. Idealistic. Awesome. Idealistic. He is a very idealistic man at home and with his foreign affairs. He calls this the war to end all wars. Like, he really feels like if he manages this well, that there will be no wars after this, because he's going to fix all of the things that caused the problems going into World War I. He thinks a perfect peace treaty can be a peace without victory. Like, we can go in and we don't have to say someone won and someone loses. Is this what France or anyone in Europe wants? No. Like, the Germans are like, we're going to bleed France white. Like, they're like, kill. I don't even want one guy left with a white flag. Like, this is not what Europe wants. But Wilson, very idealistic. I mean, George Clemenceau from France is like, are you freaking crazy? Like, do you see what they did? I want to win. We are going to be declared winners. They are going to be the losers. And so we're going to see that Woodrow Wilson has all of these points. There's 14 of them. Like, historians name stuff such cool names. So Wilson's 14 points. And you have to remember with Wilson, though, we've had a different level of engagement in World War I. We're going to come in very late, 1917. The war is going to be over very shortly after. We have not had as much loss. We're very idealistic about it. Like, war seemed easy peasy, cool to, you know, like, the Europeans are like, there's millions dead. We've been in this trench for, you know, like, we have a different viewpoint going on. And so Wilson's 14 points, I'm going to go through the first ones pretty quickly. They're pretty I mean, he just pretty much looks at those mania causes and says, let's get rid of the things that caused it. Abolish secret treaties. Everything should be in the open. No more secret handshakes behind the scenes. Freedom of the seas, so no more stinky submarines and unrestricted warfare. Remove economic barriers or big taxes so food's affordable to everybody. Reduction of armament burdens. So militarism, like, quit building up all this stuff, because it's wasting a weapon if you're not going to use it. Yeah, he's very idealistic. Like, everything. Let's just, like, put it all on the table. He promised of independence, so he's going to say to all of those people, like the Arabs and the people in the Balkans, it should be self-determination. You just say how you want to be ruled. Do you want a king? Do you want a democracy? And we'll separate all of you into your own little countries. So self-determination is going to be one that he wants. What do the people want? This is going to be the part where we redraw the map of Europe, World War I. Adjustment of colonial claims. in interest of both native peoples and colonizers. I don't think this one was ever achievable. I mean, especially it's like kind of talking out one side of your mouth because the U.S. becomes very imperialistic at this time. But anyway, German evacuation of Russia, restoration of Belgium, return of Alsace and Lorraine to France, evacuation and restoration of the Balkans, return of Schleswig. So reversing all of these things that had set us up for World War I, adjustment of Italy's border along ethnic lines. Autonomy for non-Turkish Arabs, parts of the Turkish Empire. So we didn't know about the other promises the British have made when he puts this point forth. Like, we don't know about that. All of that's in action. And so that's going on. And then the 14th point, right, his baby next to this one. Because you can kind of on the other 13 points, because Wilson will give in to pretty much whatever everybody else says at the Treaty of Versailles or the Paris Peace Conference, just to keep his baby number 14. This is like his thing. He's going to hold so strongly to this 14th point, he's going to let a lot of the other good, like really we're like nodding our heads like, yeah, that would stop some of this stuff. And the 14th point is international organization to supply collective security, which will later be called the League of Nations. So this is his baby. This is an international peace organization of all nations of the world. He wants, if anybody would ever do what Germany did again, then like the rest of the nations would like beat them down, like stomp their face in, like circle them up. Yeah. And so he thinks that if this happens, this would give them that we'd never have a war like this again because all of the nations would stop it. And so
When did Wilson die?
he died shortly after this. Yeah, he was kind of sick during. He was pretty sick during this.
Okay.
But I think, I mean, well, he does know what happens. Like, our Senate won't even sign the Treaty of Versailles. So, like, we didn't even join the League of Nations. So he's pretty like, I got my baby over there, but it's not really my baby because the strongest nation now is not even in it.
Is it United Nations kind of?
So the different concept, yeah.
Later, I get that.
Yeah.
Would Bush want Germany to be not Germany anymore? Because it's like, he basically said all of us apart everything that Germany did to become unified.
Right, yes. Yeah, because look what happened when they got power. Like, crazy, stepping on toes everywhere. What time is it? 9:45. All right, so I wanted to give you guys 45 minutes of work time on your FRQs today, or time to take the words of the week quiz. I think the only words of the week that are on there from this end part, there might be 3. I am happy to continue up until the end of the war, and then just let you listen to the impact of World War I on European society, which has no words on words of the week, which is a page and a half, adding it to your Russian review section. Or I can stop here and add the end of the war there and make sure you get a firm 45 minutes for your FRQs. Okay. All right. Shouldn't take me long. You guys seem pretty familiar. So, Paris Peace Conference of 1919. So, oh wait, no, I'm not that there yet. End of the war. Meuse-Argonne offensive in the spring of 1918. So we're not worried about the Russians anymore because of the Russian Revolution. So the Germans are going to transfer the divisions from the east, after Russia is gone, to the Western Front and mount a massive offensive. This is they're like trying to revive that Schlieffen plan, like that fast, like we should have beat them in 6 weeks kind of thing. It's their last attempt to salvage the war. But I really do believe we'd be talking about this, like, have you guys ever read that book, If? That history book of, like, if the South had won the Civil War, if the United States had not entered World War I, if Hitler hadn't become, it's pretty cool, like it plays out like in a really researched manner what may have happened in like the alternate universe if you went back in time and like changed the butterfly effect. What? If.
Oh, it's a whole book?
If,
I know it's like, you know, on a website.
Yeah, I know they might have a website by now. It's a pretty popular book. You can. If.
World War II?
I think it's just called If, like in.
No, what should I, because I mean if I Google it.
Yeah, like historical book If, yeah. And so, the U.S., however, has entered the war. So Russia's out, but the United States is in time to assist Britain and France in stopping the German offensive. Basically, we spell doom for the Central Powers. Okay, we interlay. I mean, I'm not saying that from an egocentrical viewpoint. I mean, it's just the cards were stacked that way. So the Central Powers are going to have to seek peace because we are there in time to aid. They're not able to launch this offensive. They've already struggled on the Eastern Front. And Russia's out. They try to move those troops, but they've been entrenched for all this time. So President Wilson's kind of snazzy. Like, I want to do this. I wish that wasn't littering. But he takes all these 14 points and prints them in pamphlets in German and flies them over the Western Front and drops them. This is all I'm at. We can end this in peace and there won't be a winner and we can all go home and say it was a tie and and they're fluttering down from the airplanes and imagine you've been entrenched all this, that would sound pretty good, and the Germans are reading it and they're our government kind of sucks and the people at home are starving and they're spreading them over Germany too and they're I'm hungry so I don't know, that just sounds amazing to me. I just want to see pamphlets falling from the sky. And so the Central Powers, because of the people, are really wanting fair treatment. They believe because these pamphlets are dropped, they're going to get fair treatment. They want the end of the war without a victory. They just it's almost promising, we don't have to say we lost. It can just be over. And so we're going to see Germany and Austria-Hungary were racked with revolution for people wanting to end this war. And Austria-Hungary is going to surrender on November 3rd. They are fed up with the war. You have to remember, they have been in this war for a long time. Our troops had run into this area to defense all fresh and ready. What's a war? It's just Wah! And so they're just tired and hungry and ready to be done. And Germany then will agree to an armistice, which is not a peace treaty. It's just a ceasefire. No more shots will be fired, which began on November 11th. 11/11/11 at 11/11, which, by the way, my grandfather has a very good sense of humor. He turned to me on Armistice Day and said, "What time is it?" And I was like, "It's 11:10," and then he died at 11/11/11 on 11/11. So yeah, he did that. I know he did that on purpose. He was my history guy, and so he would have planned that out.
So it's on September 11th, 2011.
2011, yeah. 11/11/11/11/11. Yeah. Yep. So, anyway, just a side note, my grandfather was one of my biggest inspirations as a child. He's my history guy, so that's his sense of humor right there. He would have done that. But, so, Wilhelm II is forced to abdicate the throne. Of course, he's not wanting this armistice, so, the people are angry at him. He's asked to abdicate the throne, and he flees to Holland. And the crowd in Germany is just woo, we're now a republic. They can just, woo, then we're going to see this doesn't work out very well. He's gone. We're now poof, we're a republic. Yeah. And Wilhelm, we're going to see, gets to Holland, and who do you think he's going to blame for their loss in World War I? Just a random guess. Who would Wilhelm flee to Holland and be it's not my fault we lost, it's...
Bismarck.
No? The Jews and the socialists. And he's going to start to say that they're equal, because a lot of socialists happen to be Jews and a lot of Jews happen to be socialists, vice versa. And so he's going to start this with the Weimar Republic and all of this going. And so,
That's the sequel right there.
oh, by the way, this whole thing, what was I going to say? I lost my place. Ceasefire. Okay. So we're down to the Paris Peace Conference then, because we've only had an armistice. So we actually need to finally finish the line. Oh, I'm really bad at clicking. So yeah. Great War ends. Yay, end of the war. Just got lost in our discussion there. So, the Paris Peace Conference, 1919. We have our big four there. The Germans are going to have to surrender while they're still in France, and so we have our big four here. I think it's in a railroad car in the middle of the forest. And it's pretty embarrassing. You're in there kind of sneak away, sign this armistice, da-da-da. But then we're going to have an actual peace conference to bring this to the end. 1919, the big four, we have Lloyd George, the Prime Minister of Britain. Clemenceau, the Prime Minister, George Clemenceau, the Prime Minister of France. President Woodrow Wilson from the United States, and Vittorio Orlando, who is the ruler from Italy. And a lot of other people are going to be there, but only 4 are allowed to leave the conference. You may notice that all of the Central Powers who were in this war are excluded. Usually a peace treaty deals with both sides. So we're kind of starting off wonky anyway. No Germany, no Austria, no Ottoman Empire. I mean, they're allowed to watch from like the balcony, but they are not allowed to participate. So, I mean, we're not starting things off very well at all. Since France was concerned with its future security, they kind of take the lead and don't allow them to be there. Italy is going to be there first, like I said, but they're going to storm out angry. Like, that's the story of Italy. Like, let's just leave. And it would not, because it would not get the territories. Remember that it had been promised if it came in on the Allied side. We're like, oh, sorry. Thanks for your help. Bye. And so they don't get the territories that they want to the north. And so I want to make a note here for you that, so now Italy's out. We have Britain, France, and the United States, really. And Clemenceau wants revenge. He had been in the Franco-Prussian War, actually, and so he has a lot of resentment and anger built up towards the Germans and now World War I. And so he's not just talking like, I want reparations. It's like, I want total like victory and success. And so we're going to see this playing out here. So this is going to equal the Versailles Treaty. There are lots of treaties up to this, but the Versailles Treaty is the most prominent, famous of this group of treaties, the main one. And so it's going to create mandates. It is going to create mandates for former colonies and territories of the Central Powers. So this is where we're going to see the creation of Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan. So we're going to create out of the Ottoman Empire little colonies, so they're going to deal with that area first. Much of the Middle East will now be controlled by Britain and France. And you might make a note here that Britain, even while controlling the Middle East, does not keep that promise to the Arabs. So, ickiness here. George Clemenceau is going to want Germany to pay. And Lloyd George of Britain is going to want Germany to pay in money, but not like pay. So we have Britain and the United States, of course, Woodrow Wilson being really idealistic. It's like, but we don't have to even declare a winner. So we have all those different personalities going in here. But Article 2, remember though, Wilson's willing to give in to a lot of these negative things to keep what? His baby, number 14, okay, the League, to get his International Peace Organization, the League of Nations. So Article 231 is going to be like where France is kind of stepping in. It's going to place sole blame for the war on Germany, not Austria. Like, France is not concerned. Austria is a big part of this. I mean, like a big, huge, like the start of, they're like, no. I am pointing my finger at Germany. I have a lot to say about Germany, and they want Germany to be severely punished, mainly like Wilhelm II and his blank check thing, They're like, it's got to be Germany. And Germany will be forced to pay huge reparations to Britain and France, 132 billion gold marks. The last payment was made in October of 2010 on this, even after it was reduced. So that's, think about that. Pay that.
That's like a massive war debt from World War II.
What? Yeah, like we're not even talking like World War II. That's just World War I.
Are they still paying that?
Yes, but there's been changes to that as well. Yes, 132 gold marks. October 2010, last payment, and it was reduced for some other, something was arranged with other conflicts coming out of there. I'll post the link to that, the actual newspaper article that came out on that day on Edmodo. And so German army, so after this crap load of money, the German army and navy will also be severely reduced. I think 100,000 men is all they can keep in their army. They're not allowed to draft or conscript. They're not allowed to have any heavy artillery, so bye-bye Big Bertha. I'm sure that lady was all happy about that. And they're not allowed to have submarines. So all of this here, Navy, I think that is within the 100,000 of the military that they can have. The Rhineland will be demilitarized. And so that is going to be that little buffer. It's going to be a buffer area. We're always looking for that buffer area. The Saar coal mines are going to be taken over by France, so that's right next to the Rhineland. It's because they're worth lots of money, so they're going to seize that as part of the first payments. Germany will have to lose all of its colonies that Wilhelm II had started all this crap over. And then Wilson is going to give in to all of this to get his baby, number 14, and that is the League of Nations. So the League of Nations will be created. Germany and Russia, however, will not be included because like we're not inviting you to this, crazies. So the U.S. Senate, however, so Wilson gets all this up for his baby. The U.S. Senate is going to be like, so because who has the right to declare war? Who has the right to sign the peace treaties? The Senate. Okay, so if they join this League of Nations and it's the League of Nations like oath to step in whenever someone stomps on somebody, who loses their power to declare war? The Senate, and they're not ready for that. And so they are going to not sign on to the League of Nations. This whole thing that Wilson went through all this trouble for and gave into a lot of stuff that's going to cause problems today and lead us up to World War II, not going to sign it. And so we're going to see that the treaty results in U.S. isolationism. We're like backing out for 2 decades. We'll sign a separate treaty later, ending this war. And so later when Hitler starts attacking stuff, the League of Nations won't be able to do anything because the strongest nation in the world is like, came in for a year, had some fun, we're just going to stay over here now. Like, so we're going to see that the League of Nations was just born as a mere shadow of what it had originally been intended to be. And we let a lot of negative stuff in instead of it. So I'm going to pick up with, because that wasn't too bad, you still have half an hour of work time. I'm going to get you into your QD, and then I'm going to include the impact of World War I on European society, which you guys know is just my review section of the entire packet, with your Russian review, so that'll make it all happy and cozy, a review with a review, and put that in there. So you have all the words done that are going to be on your Words of the Week quiz. So you may choose what you'd like to do with this 30 minutes. Take your Words of the Week quiz, 15 fill in the blank, or you may work on your FRQs, which are due by 4:30 today. I actually probably be leaving a little bit later because of a parent meeting, so you can probably catch me just a little bit later if you're going to stay and work. Other than that, closed door, sorry.